Well, 2 weeks in a row, I was not feeling well enough to do the stream, but I thought I'm just going to force my way through it. I don't really have a major topic today, though we will mention that my tank turned 12 years old this week. But let's just go ahead and get into our normal show. And today I'll be answering questions that you pose, and I'll do what I can do to help you with answers. Alrighty, so Rogers Reef Food is the sponsor of this channel. He sponsors us each week. Appreciate that. This is the type of frozen food that your fish will come eat right out of your hand. So if you enjoy doing that, this is the food you should get from your local fish store. Coral Magazine is my second job. I don't know, third job? This is where I put out a magazine every 2 months, and these are the covers of the 13 issues that I've done so far, and we're working on number 14 now. I do have a teaser slide, but I'm not sure if I'm going to share it or not, to show you the latest cover, which I'm excited about because I designed this cover from my imagination, and I just said, man, I really want this. So I sat down with Matt Peterson at midnight, and by 2 in the morning, we had a great idea. I know. So anyway, it has been designed by our team. It's beautiful. I can't wait for you guys to see it. It will be the January-February issue, 2026. And that's all I'm going to tell you at the moment. But if you are not a subscriber, please do subscribe as soon as you possibly can because the price is in fact going up. It turns out I leaked that information and it wasn't quite true yet. And I was like, I don't understand. I thought November 1st. And I was like, no, you had it wrong. So anyway, the price is going up. So if you want to save money, subscribe now. coralmagazine.com/Milev23 will save you a couple of bucks. And of course, you know, if you wait until the price goes up, then you can still use the code. You'll still save a couple of bucks, but you'll be paying more because you waited. And I keep telling you, don't wait. Just do it right now. I offer a one-on-one consultation. This is where we talk in a video chat for an hour. And I charge $125 for my time. If you need help with your tank and you want someone that can give you the answers and see your system and, you know, just really get involved, that's me. So I do this every week, and if you need some help, I can schedule you in. We will do whatever software you need. I'm going to, you know, maybe I'll see things and I'll ask you questions about that and kind of dial in some of those. And that's, I've had numerous times where I spoke with someone and they just said, oh my God, that was totally worth the call right there. So I'm hoping that if you need some help, I can help you. But today, we're just going to have a Q&A, which is sort of the same thing, except I can't see you or your system. So that's a little bit different. And this is free, which I know everyone loves things that are free. So November 10th of this year, my tank officially turned 12 years old. So that means that is the time of when the livestock went in the aquarium, not like when I put it on the stand or something boring like that. That is officially when the reef goes in. And over these last 12 years, a lot of things have happened, but in the big picture of things, it has done quite well. I did take a picture to show you. It's nothing special, but this is my tank as of right now, you know, well, a couple days ago, on the day, on November 10th. So that was, what, 5 days ago? And you can see I still haven't dealt with the top section there where the Monty is taking up all that space. And there's an aggro up there. I mean, all that has to be cleaned out and get it back down to the rock work and plant some more things on the reef to make it pretty again because, you know, it's not gorgeous. And I know that. I see other people's tanks like, oh, your tank is so pretty. I need to do more. And I just find myself constantly saying, well, I'll do it later because I have other things to do. So I can tell you a few things. Spock right there in the center, that Nassau tang, I've had since 2004. So that is a 21-year-old fish in my possession. There is a blue, what is it called? Blue ridge coral that's hiding behind that big yellow thing that's called a Cactus pavona that's right behind Spock, the Nassau tang. And that blue ridge I've had since 2002. So that is a very old coral. I've had it 23 years. Of course, the anemones are not treating it well. The hammer coral that's on the far right there above the yellow tang, that has been in my tank since, well, I've had it in my possession since 2004. Actually, might have been 2003. I went back through all my pictures trying to figure out exactly when I got that coral. And, I've given away a lot of pieces. I've grown it into monster colonies. I've trimmed it back significantly. And, yeah, so there's some longevity. The tongue coral on the bottom of the tank is doing really badly right now. And it has lost quite a bit of tissue on the left end of it. I would say I've lost 1 or 2 inches of that right there. That thing is like 14 inches long. And it's just peeling and it's rotting and I don't know what's happening. I've had it 10 years. So I'm just, I'm working on water. I was at a fish store last week and I said, hey, I need to just have you double check my nitrate just for fun. And they tested it and they said, wow, it's nice and low. Good job. Don't let it get too low. And I was just like, I don't know if I believe them. So I mean, it was supposed to reinforce me and make me feel like everything's good. But instead, what ended up happening was that it made me come home and test, and they were sky high. Like something has changed, and it's just radically higher. So I did a 200-gallon water change over a 3-day period. So I did it Friday night, 100 gallons, and then Sunday night, 100 gallons. And that got the nitrate down to 80. I'm like, okay. So I've got to do a water change in that tank behind me there. And I'll do another one on the croc tank as well, and I will do one on Caitlin's reef. And then it's time to refill my vat because I've used up all the water. It's time to make another batch. So that's kind of crazy that I made 250 gallons of salt water 2 weeks ago, and it's time to make another batch. But I'm just going to hack away at the system and see if I can get things back on track. Also, in the 400-gallon, there were wisps or areas where dinoflagella had taken hold because the colonies were just too big and at the surface. And it wasn't really big and concerning. It's still not, like horrendous or anything like that, but it's definitely there. It's causing some chaos. I'm thinking I might dose some peroxide to see if I can kind of nip it in the bud. But when I'm in there like doing a water change, I will siphon off what I can, from those areas, or hit them with a turkey baster trying to knock it loose. So that's kind of an annoying thing. And it could be the age of the tank. It could just be circumstances have just gotten perfect for it to start growing in there. I don't know. But I don't like it, and I want it gone. So that is basically my biggest news. So today we're just going to answer some of your questions. So I'll just throw this on the screen now. Look, there's a little prompt that says, be sure to use @Milev when asking questions so I don't miss them. I try to look at the chat and not miss anything, but if you put that @Milev in front, I'll definitely catch it. So I appreciate you guys tuning in today. It's you did a good job. Here I'm over here like, I don't feel well. My eyes are burning. It's like, okay. But so last week, I missed the live stream because I wasn't feeling well. I woke up and I was just like, this is not a good day. And I thought, well, maybe by 11 I'll start to feel a little bit more normal. And by 1 o'clock, I was like, I'm absolutely not doing the live stream today. And I can't even remember how that day played out, but I feel like by 5 o'clock, I still was not doing well, and I think I had a headache or something. Something was going on. It was something, I always have something. So unfortunately, it nixed the stream, and so we couldn't do it. All right, let's see. Butcher says, let me throw this on the other screen because I like it. It's not a question, but it's a comment. I like it. He says, thanks for your advice on Facebook. I washed all my sand, painted the back wall of the aquarium, put it all back together in 2 days. Good job. Yeah, his post originally was like, we're painting this room, the tank has to be drained, and can I leave the sand in there for a week? And I was like, that's the perfect time to wash out the sand. And all you do is, just to tell everyone, because anyone that's tuning in didn't see that thread, the fact is that when you have a tank sitting with no circulation, the sand can, it can survive. The bacteria can continue to live, but there's other things happening. And if you're going to drain your tank and move your livestock away from the area because of the fumes of painting, you might as well clean out the sand bed as well. And so in this case, I just said, just rinse it really well. You can just use a garden hose. You don't have to use RODI water. You don't have to do any dechlorinator. Just wash, in a bucket, just really fluff it up and make all the detritus lift up and float away. And usually I recommend you do this on a driveway, preferably during nice weather, not the middle of winter. Because, who wants to be out there with a garden hose, standing in the snow? But I said just rinse it all out and pour off the water. And then you can take the sand and you can put it inside those kitchen 13-gallon trash bags. And the reason I recommend that is because I made the terrible mistake myself of putting it back into buckets. And then when I was setting up my 400-gallon in the beginning, when I first set it up, I was tilting the bucket in the tank and I was pouring out the sand very carefully. But the metal handle of the bucket was grinding a terrible scratch in the front glass of my brand new aquarium. I was so mad. And so now I'm always like super cautious about putting anything in the tank, obviously. And having in trash bags, it's plastic, nothing's going to scratch anything. You can just fill the bag as much as you feel it can lift, and then you just hoist the bag in, invert it, dump the sand out, level it all out, start adding your water. So in this case, I just said, yeah, you don't have to dry it out. You don't have to do anything special, and just get things going. And that's exactly what he did. John is here from England. Hello. Oh, there's Chris. Hey, Chris, thank you for chiming in. Let's see what he said here. DKH and CO2 are stable once again, down to 0.5 swings that I can deal with. My calcium reactor pH is 8.49 at 70 milliliters per minute with an effluent of 25 DKH. That'll work. 2.5 seconds per bubble. So different from yours. Yeah, that is a little bit different from mine. But that's okay. 8.49 in your calcium reactor is... That can't be right. 7.49? We want to have a low enough pH to dissolve the media. In my calcium reactor, I have it set to 7.1. And I'm running mine at 60 milliliters per minute. And knowing the effluent of your calcium reactor is really important. And for those of you that have a calcium reactor, it's just nice to know that it should measure between 19 and 35 DKH. And if you're mixing your own two-part solution, you're making your own alkaline solution, I'm going off memory here, and it's been years since I did this, but I think when I was doing that test of my effluent, I went ahead and said, I'm curious what alkalinity measures, and I feel like it was like 80 DKH. It was crazy high. Now, obviously, you can't use a HANA checker for that measurement because I think it tops out at 20, and so that, in these things we're talking about, you can't do it with a HANA checker. I don't know. Maybe there's a way, but out of the box, no. And maybe something with dilution, I guess, in mathematics. But if you just have like a test kit, like Elos or Tropic Marin or Nios or whatever, just any alkalinity test kit where you can just count the drops as you're adding them in, you'll figure out what your total alkalinity is of your solution. And it is nice to know if your solution is the proper strength. Just sort of like Kalkwasser, we learned when Chris Meckley was on this channel, he said that he likes to have his alkalinity mix up to 12.44 pH. And I was like, that's a weird number. I always knew it had to be 12. And he says, no, it has to be 12.44. And so he measures to make sure he hits that number. And then he feels like it's going to work the best for his coral farm. So in the case of us, if we're trying to add alkalinity to our tanks, knowing the strength of your alkalinity is the first step for consistency. Just because you're putting in 5 milliliters of some magical clear solution that you can't even tell what it is, it's nice to know the strength of it. And I think the same would be knowing the strength of your calcium solution. I've never done that kind of stuff. I've never, if it says just mix this amount of powder with 1 gallon of water, I was like, okay, that's all I need to know. But if you knew that it was like, I don't know, 40,000 ppm calcium, then you could, in the future, when you're mixing up batches, you could just kind of make sure it's still hitting that number or not, so you know if the solution was good. I don't know. That's something that might be worth delving into one day. We'll see. But Chris had posted something on Instagram, and I was like, I have a lot of questions. And so I called him up, and we talked for about 30 minutes or so because his numbers were really a roller coaster, and the tank was having hard times with that. So I'm really glad that our phone call did help some, Chris, and I hope, like you said, now it's only a 0.5 swing. I'd love that to come a little tighter if at all possible. Thomas says his birthday is on Monday. Happy 38th. Very happy for you, Thomas. I'm glad you're doing well. And Triggerfish is eating his lunch while we chat here. Triggerfish says, what's a water change? I know, right? I think I did 4 this year. Probably 3. But I have another couple looming for sure. I mean, the problem is I don't know how the nitrate shot up. I don't know. It was down like 30, 35. And it's been there for many, many months. And so, just having the store check, I just wanted to make sure it was still around 30. And for them to say, oh, it's nearly 0, I'm like, well, that's weird. And then I come home and it's blood red on my test kit. I'm like, oh. So And the thing is, you can double check a test kit. Like, for example, I use API for nitrate because it's a throwaway test. It's just not a critical one where I need absolute authority. I just need to know yellow is none, red is bad, and a tinge of orange is ideal. I mean, that's pretty simple. So if you are using a test kit and you're worried, well, that thing's never accurate, or it's not honest to you, or it's lying, all you have to do is like check a batch of salt water that you just made, and if it's measuring 0, and then you go measure a tank, or you measure, if you have several tanks, you can measure different ones, and you're seeing variances, the test kit is working. Now, if everything comes out yellow, you're like, yeah. I mean, we did a test kit party one time. It was like 6 or 8 of us went to a guy's house. This was a club function, and we all brought our test kits with us, and we all brought a sample of water from our aquarium, and we put it in the middle of the table, and then each of us would do like the calcium test of Mark's water. And then we would each of us do the alkalinity test of Mark's water. And we took notes using our own individual kits. So each, this guy had Salifert, this guy had whatever, let's just say somebody had API and somebody had NIOS. I'm just throwing names, that I remember. But we did this, and then we would write down what everyone's numbers were. I mean, we could have been a little more nerdy and had the whiteboard up there on the wall and put all the numbers in columns, or, use a spreadsheet, but we were just using pad and paper. A pad of paper and pen. So we ended up doing this whole thing, and then we had to use Dave's water and go through all 8 test kits. And then we had to go through Steve's water. This took forever, but it helped us, see if the test kits were, reasonably within range of each other. And this one guy, his nitrate test kit was 0 for all of us, and we all just said, how much for your kit? Because we wanted that low number. Back in the day, you didn't want nitrate. Nowadays, we're like, you need some nitrate or your tank will die. It's funny how things have changed a little bit in that regard, because, the original plan, I mean, back in the day, 20 years ago, really 2002, 2003, 2004, those years, you would shoot for 0 nitrate, 0 phosphate, because, you want those low numbers, but you need your alkaline, your calcium, and magnesium, and your salinity to be correct. And nowadays, it's because everyone's using dry rock and dry sand, they are needing nitrate and phosphate to avoid things like dinoflagellates, which I do think that's the main reason they get it. And it's weird that my old reef is growing these dinos, but, at the same time, I haven't been doing water changes like Triggerfish says, what's that? And I'm just like, yeah, so, And, I did let the tank just ferment too long because I didn't do the reset I'd planned on doing 3 to 4 months ago. Let's see. John says, I'm changing my 3-foot tank to a 5-foot soon. I got the tank and some upgrades. Any advice, as I'll be putting the new tank in the same place as my 3-footer? Okay, yeah, I got lots of advice. First of all, you're going to need some kind of vessels to hold all your livestock. It can be trash cans. It can be those big coolers you take to the picnic. It can be trays. It can be, whatever you need. Just things that can hold salt water so your floor stays dry, and you can take your livestock and you can move it. And then you take all your rock and you put that in a trash can. And you got to be able to put these things in these containers just like you're going to move to a new home, right? But you don't have to bag them up. You don't have to seal lids. You just got to scoot them out of the way, because the 3-foot tank has to move away from the wall for the 5-foot tank to come in. So you need a path to walk in and out. But you still need the fish to be safe and healthy. And the fish can be your tank's a 3-footer. You might have 15 fish. You might have 100. I don't know. But whatever amount of fish you have, if you have too many, if you feel like, it's a significant bioload, or you have a fish that's big, you might want to have multiple buckets, basically, with some nice clean salt water from, the first water you drain from your tank goes into those buckets because it's crystal clear and it hasn't gotten cloudy at all. Save that water for your fishes. Then set that aside. Just have them at the ready. And then you'll start pulling out coral and putting them in those containers, or inside, like I said, if you have a big cooler you normally fill up with Coca-Cola and stuff, right? You can set that up with about 6 or 8 inches of water. You can put in your corals one by one. You can hand them to a person and they put it in. And then you'll add either an air stone in the corner or a small power head just to keep some circulation. You might lay a heater in there depending on the temperature of the room, because you don't want the water cooling off. But because it's in a cooler, it's got some insulation, which kind of helps it from cooling off too rapidly. So you've got that over there, right? Then you're down to rocks. Now you need a trash can, and you would take your trash can and bring it near the tank and start moving rocks in. And any rock that has encrusting corals on it, kind of point that rock, with encrusting coral, point, upward or toward the edge. So as you're stacking, you're kind of protecting those corals from being harmed. You're keeping track of where they are. And then as you go deeper into the tank, you're going to get to essentially the base rock. That rock will kind of just stack up in there, but we don't want to crush any important corals. You might even have to take some base rock and put it in the middle of the trash can, and then lift the other rock up and put it on top of that has the coral facing up. And then we'll roll that trash can out of the way. And now you're able to drain the sump, drain out all, as much as you possibly can to make everything as light as possible. And then we're going to pull out the aquarium probably with a helper. And then you're going to remove the sump with a helper. And then you're going to remove the stand with a helper. And then you're going to push in the new stand. You'll put the new tank on top of the new stand. You'll put the new sump in there, or the old sump goes in there. And then you start plumbing it all together. And then all the sand that was in the old tank, I didn't mention taking it out already, should have mentioned that, but that sand, if it's more than 6 months old, should be rinsed. And depending on where you live and what the weather is, like today here in Texas, it's 87 degrees. We forgot that it's fall. So today would be the perfect day to wash sand if that was your desire. And then when you're done with the clean sand, that will go in your 5-foot tank, and then you'll start moving your rocks into that tank as well. I left out a step because I was, going through the whole flow. Once you've gotten most of the rocks out of the tank, that's when you're going to catch your fish. And because now they have nowhere to hide, nowhere to duck under, nowhere to retreat to, and they're going to go in your clean buckets. And the fish in the clean buckets probably need an air stone and a small heater. And I did a moving video on this channel earlier this year because of the tank I had to move in New York. And I explained a lot of that and showed pictures too, I think. I also gave that presentation several times this year. So there might be a recording of it somewhere on the web that they've shared. But having those fish in buckets with an air stone and a heater, they can be good for many hours. I wouldn't do it overnight, but they'd be good for, like 5, 6, 7 hours while you're dealing with the tank situation. But we want to make sure those fish are safe and protected. We want to make sure the corals are, in a stable environment. And then it's a matter of draining, removing, resetting, putting clean sand into the new tank, starting to put the rock back in, adding new salt water in. All of that has to happen. And of course, because your tank is a 3-footer, which holds, I don't know, let's just pretend the number was 75 gallons, and now you're putting in a 5-footer, and that's 115 gallons. You're going to need more salt water than your current tank has. And because you're moving the tank, you're going to lose some salt water. It's just going to happen. So you need plenty of salt water at the ready to not only fill up the tank, but also to make up for all the water you had to throw away because it was ruined during the moving process. Because, as you get down to the sand bed, it's all mucky, disgusting brown water. You're not going to want any of that. The water that the fish are in, you could pour that in the tank, but you might not want to. You might want to say, I'd rather move them into the clean tank with what water was decent. If you could keep 50% of your water during this process and add 50% new water, that would be nice. If you can't manage that, if you only have 25% of the old water and then the rest is 75% water, it's just a heck of a water change. It's going to be really, really pure water. So you're not going to have to acclimate fish because it's all in the same room. Everything should be about the same. I mean, obviously, you want to make sure your salinity matches. But if they match, you can go ahead and start putting your rocks in, add the corals in there. I'd set all the corals down on the sand bed initially because the water's going to be a little cloudy. Get those fish into the tank, get some kind of circulation in the tank. And then after all of that, then you can move to the next step, which is dialing in the filtration, the things that are in the sump. If you're not able to get the protein skimmer working that night, that's okay. You can do it the next day, that kind of stuff. If you had filter socks in the old sump and you're wanting to put new socks in, you may have to change those socks after a few hours or the first thing in the morning the next day because they're so clogged up. Go rinse them off, get them cleaned out again, and put them back in to keep to help maintain clarity of the water is what I'm trying to say. So that's kind of your game plan. There's a lot to do, and the thing is, this is a project that once you start, nothing else matters. And by that, I mean you're going to have to really focus on providing that livestock with your full attention. And if you're married, if you have a spouse, if they're getting upset, if it's taking too long, just apologize and say as soon as you can wrap up, you will. But during a tank move is not the time to go to dinner with friends or some other thing that was scheduled, or schedule your tank move saying this Saturday, that's all I'm doing, just so you know, I'm absolutely unavailable. So go to the movies, go to the mall, take the kids to whatever your home situation is, do that. Or if they're going to help you, let them know this is going to take a long time, and all I'm going to do is bribe you with pizza and Coca-Cola and cookies, and I just need your help, and it's going to be stressful, and I'm going to try not to be rude and snap at you, but heads up, it's going to be hard. Just kind of anticipate the worst and then try to do better because we're trying to upgrade, and it's important, and you want to do it right, and you don't want to lose any animals in the process. I hope that helped. And if any of that stuff I talked about wasn't clear, or if some more questions pop up, stick them in this chat because I'm here for a little while. Okay, Chris is back with more about his calcium reactor thing. 1/10 of the effluent, 9/10 RODI. Oh, okay, so that's how you could do it. So you can dilute the liquid in the Hannah checker. Nice. What's the best way to remove 2 10-inch leathers attached to the same rock? Can it prevent them from growing back? Well, it's really either you cut it or you tear it. And normally I would cut it. I would cut as close to the rock as possible. The stump of the bottom of the leather will not be happy initially. It's going to need some time to heal. But trying to peel it off the rock, you're just going to really wreck the core of the animal. So I wouldn't do that. So it's really a matter of cutting. You're just going to have to get out your machete and just go at it. And, I had a leather that was, it was monstrous. It was the diameter of a 33-gallon trash can. A typical trash can you'd have on the side of the house. It was that big. It was 1/3 of my 280-gallon tank. It took up a ton of space, and when we lifted it out, I'm sure some rock was attached to the foot, and it took 2 people to get out of the tank because it was that big and heavy. It was insane. And then to prevent it from growing back, it's just removing the tissue off the rock after you've got the animal out of the way. So you would just scrape it away. I see someone said, oh, forget the 5-foot tank, get a 7-foot tank. That's funny. All right, let's see. Paul says, I just tore down a 230-gallon to kill a tulip wrasse. To kill one? Wrong scientific name and acted too quickly. What? I have more questions than answers here. First of all, let me look up what a tulip wrasse is, because I know of a tulip anemone. How about tubelip wrasse? The name AI says, the name tulip wrasse likely refers to one of several species of tubelid wrasses that have tube-like lips. Oh, so they're like Kardashians. Got it. Let's see. Let me look at one. So, to kill or to remove? You must have really been mad at this wrasse. And that goes back to my moving story from February, where there was this huge checkerboard wrasse. It was beautiful. It was in the tank, and it was really hard. And I finally, I'd removed everything from the tank. I mean, I'd removed the sand. I was down to grains on the bottom thinking, where is this wrasse? Because it was a large wrasse, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I thought, well, let's get the last scoop of sand. And, I mean, there was not much there. And as I'm pushing the tray to, collect this fish comes flying out of the dust that was sand. It was insane. And it went the other direction. And, of course, I had to grab a couple of nets, and I caught it. And I put it in one of those buckets with the air stone and the heater, like we're talking about. And then, the client said to me, did you get the wrasse? And I said, yeah, I got the wrasse. He goes, you really got the wrasse? I'm like, yeah, I got it. He's like, they never get the wrasse. And I guess by they, he means other people that have moved tanks from in the past don't get the wrasse. But I said, no, I got the wrasse. And he's like, I hate that RAS. And that was just I did not see that going where it was going. I mean, I thought he would say, well, thank you very much for making sure my RAS is okay and that it's, going to go in the new tank. And then after all that, he's like, I hate that RAS. So I guess you hated yours. Let's see. That's too funny. Panopolis says he has a theoretical question. Do you think there are environmental factors to cyanobacteria? It's in my reef and it's in my nearby fresh tanks too. Is there a causative agent or is it just an empty correlation, you think? Well, here's the thing. Cyanobacteria isn't like an infection. It's always present. It exists in fresh water, which is why you see it in fresh. It's in brackish water and it's in salt water. And it's in deep, deep layers of the earth. I mean, it's everywhere. The only time we don't like it is when it becomes visible. But as long as it's an invisible bacteria, we don't care. But when it blooms, it turns green or blue or red, and you see these blankets in your tank, you're like, I hate this stuff. And you're like, I must kill the cyanobacteria. And using a product like ChemiClean or Red Cyano RX will kill it off, reduce the mass, and make the tank look good again. But it still exists. It is a absolute natural part of the bacteria that makes up what makes the world turn, so to speak. And I remember this is probably 2 years ago, and one of those science channels, and they talked about how they drilled down, 2 miles into the earth, and they found this strata, and they're like, it's so interesting, and it was filled with cyanobacteria. So I think that's where it comes from, that spot inside the earth. But no, we just don't like it when it blooms. But typically, people often seem to have it around the same time of year, which is why it's been stated that it's seasonal and it will appear. And I've always wondered how the seasonal part works, because if you have it in your tank and I have it in my tank, but you always have windows open with fresh air, and I never open my windows because I like CO2, then how did I get it? Because it didn't like blow in with the pollen, so to speak, And one theory I've had, you said theoretical question, so I have a theoretical answer. I feel like maybe the reason it's seasonal is because with the shifting of the Earth's orbit around the sun, during different times of the year, the sunlight comes in your room differently. And so like you might get morning sun that's just hitting the side of the tank that never happens the rest of the year. But like for a few weeks, you're actually getting, it's just a thing. It just happens, And so your room is being lit from a different angle, and it seems to trigger this response in the aquariums maybe. We try not to put our tanks into the direct path of a window. We try to avoid that at all costs. And my tank's in the epicenter of my house, but the sun is rising from a different angle of my back door for most of the year. It's just daylight's coming in. But there is a specific time of year, probably twice a year, where it really comes in and I get to see the sides of my corals, and the sun is almost on the glass like crazy, and it's really bright. I'm like, wow, look at my tank right now, it's neato. But I usually don't get up that early, so I miss that experience, and so I don't tend to see it too often. But maybe that's the reason. But we also know that when water parameters in the tank are in an imbalance, we have things that happen, and certain bacteria die off and other bacteria increase in mass, and it causes to have various issues. So that's kind of my thought process on your question. Alex says, do you think nitrate to phosphate ratio matters? I heard 100 nitrate to phosphate is good for coloration. I haven't heard that one, but I do know that people are obsessed with the ratio. And I don't know. I remember sitting at Reef Retreat last year, and there was this big topic about this. And I was like, they're really going on about this Redfield ratio again. So I think that's the right one. So I went ahead and I grabbed my calculator on my phone, and I was doing some math, and I was trying to see what's my ratio. And of course, my tank's always out of balance. It's always terrible. And so I took a screenshot and I texted over to Richard Ross, who's across the room. And I was like, look at this, my tank. Oh my God. And he just rolled his eyes at me. So normally, if you're trying to keep your nitrate anywhere under 20 ppm, your tank is going to do quite well. If your phosphate is below 0.1 ppm, your tank will do well. There is this magic number of 0.03 phosphate and 2 nitrate that a lot of people have been espousing for a long time. But we also have learned through experience, through hands-on hobby keeping, that corals are really adaptable and they can really adjust. I mean, think about it. My nitrates shot crazy high. Why is my reef not just dead from end to end? When my potassium dropped out because of a bad barrel assault that happened a few years ago that you guys heard about, half my reef did not care. The other half imploded. I lost a lot of corals because the potassium level in the water column was 50% of what it should have been. That's a big, huge change that's bad. And we haven't talked about potassium in a while, so in case you forgot or you don't know or it's new to you, 400 ppm is the goal. And my tank was 198, which is a vast difference. And the sad part is I had backup corals in a separate tank, but I did a water change on that tank too with the same low potassium water, and I killed those corals, and I lost corals in my reef, and I didn't even have my backups, and I was super frustrated with, Anyway, so lesson learned. Anyway, we want to make sure that we are having stable numbers as consistently as possible. And if, you're asking specifically for good coloration, one of the things you can do is you can talk to some of the people whose tanks you really admire online. Like if somebody posts a picture of the reef and it's gorgeous, you could say, hey, what's your nitrate and phosphate level? Why are your colors so colorful? And keep in mind too, there's a few other things that are happening here when it comes to coral color. Our cameras are giving us one look. The filter on the front of your camera is giving you another look. And then the enhance options that you can use in the editor of the software in your phone can really make corals pop. And I remember when I was taking pictures of flowers outside and sharing them online, one of the people said, hey, is that actually the true color of the flower? I'm like, I took it with my phone in the sunlight. I don't know what you mean. And he says, some cameras add more color than there really is. Is that what your phone is doing? I was like, I don't think so. So that's another reason to put a little bit of doubt into the colors you're seeing. And then also, if you're comparing colors of coral in your aquarium to colors of corals for sale, those pictures are almost always taken directly from above. So if you're wanting to look at your corals and see how are they doing, get up on a step stool and look down in your tank from above, and you'll see what color they are. Because the color from the side will not match the color from above. You're having the light over your shoulder shining on the subject. It's a much better view. And actually, once a month, you should be looking down in your tank from above just to enjoy what you've done, because it's amazing. And this is especially true for clam keepers. So if you were to buy a blue Maxima and you put it in your tank and it's pretty and you're looking at it, but it's kind of a purplish hue. But then you look from above and it's, what do you call it? Peacock blue. It's just absolutely gorgeous from above. You should take more picture from above than from the side. So that's my answer. Thomas, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate that. I had a button on here that's supposed to do effects, and I was messing with it before the show, and it does nothing. But if I could, I'd put fireworks on the screen, and with my thank you. So he says, with a pair of captive bred mandarins, look in my tank is also loaded with plenty of ticker pods. I see them crawling over the tank. Are you saying you want to have a pair? Because your tank isn't... If you have tons of pods, you can definitely have a pair. But something didn't quite come through in that sentence, so I'm not sure I got it. Hit me up again with that one. Triggerfish says to John Wright, make sure anyone that's not helping should not be in the home. I totally agree. Panopolis says, after changing out the cartridges of micro and carbon... Okay, so the sediment filter, the carbon filter, and the DI, how long should I let it run before the tank is ready? The tank is ready. I know you're talking about RODI. I see that right here. As soon as you change the filters, it's ready. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to rinse anything. You don't have to do anything. I mean, of course, it depends where you're buying the filters. The filters I sell, they're ready to go. And I'm just comparing that to like filters you might buy at Home Depot. They are not designed for reef tanks. It's just a totally different type of filter. And I have heard people say, some people, very rarely, occasionally will say, when I install my carbon filters, I like to run that for 20 minutes first. But you would have to like disconnect some tubing that's going to the membrane so none of that carbon dust gets into the membrane. But carbon blocks shouldn't have dust. You should have a sediment filter that is pristine. It's usually wrapped in plastic, so you reveal it and it's just pure. You put that in your clean housing and you screw it on. You take your 2 carbon block filters, you put those in the housings, you screw them on, you turn it on. That's it. And the same with the DI. The only thing I recommend you do whenever you're making RODI water for your aquarium is that when you first turn on the system, the water coming out of the membrane before the DI stage, I would throw that away. I would throw away 90 seconds worth of water. That's maybe 4 ounces of water. It's just a little bit. And that is just to get rid of TDS creep of what is happening around the membrane. If you replace the membrane on the RODI system, that should be run for a full hour before you start making water for your aquarium, because the brand new membrane has a food grade preservative inside of it. That's how they're packaged. And so you want the water to force that out of the membrane into a throwaway bucket. You fill the bucket 5 gallons full. An hour later, it's 5 gallons. Throw it away, down the driveway, onto the lawn, whatever. Don't give it to your pets. Don't water your plants. Don't do anything with it. Pour it in the toilet if you want, whatever. But the first hour, that goes away. But whenever everything's just normal and you're just firing up the RO system, like I did today, I turned on my RODI system and it had already run a little bit earlier because I made coffee. And my RODI system is sort of like an octopus. So it's got a tube that goes all the way into the fish room to fill up all the containers there. I have a 250-gallon saltwater tank. I've got a 43-gallon top-off container under the 400-gallon. I've got a, I don't know, maybe 17-gallon top-off container under the frag system. And tubing goes to all of those from a single point. And that one there, I don't want any TDS creep to get through and mess up the DI resin. So that valve is always closed until I want water to go into that room, okay? Then there's another tube, and this goes into my kitchen from the same RODI system, right? And this tube will go through the wall, behind the fridge, under the sink, to a bladder tank. And that one, I don't care what the TDS is of it. It can be whatever it is. It's typically low, but whatever. That bladder tank then feeds water to a spigot that's on my sink, which is super handy. I use it for coffee, tea, hot chocolate, whatever I'm going to make. I love to use RO water for that kind of stuff. And it also feeds my ice maker. So my ice cubes are nice and clear because it's RO water. And that filter that's built into the fridge, I've never changed it. I've had the fridge for a decade. And it's funny, the filter light will change from green to red because it's thinking, oh, the filter's clogged. Like, that's not true. It's a timer. And it just knows it's been 9 months or 10 months, and it's to get you to keep buying a new filter every year for your refrigerator, which is kind of expensive. But since I'm putting pure water, basically, not RODI, just RO water, into my fridge, I know that filter is totally fine. I know that my water's totally fine. I can see the ice cubes are essentially clear, which is pretty neat. And so I just hit the reset button on the light till it turns to green again and keep going on with my life. So now, when I made the pot of coffee this morning, I used enough water from the bladder tank under the sink that it triggered the RO system to refill water into the bladder tank. That's just normal, standard operating procedure in my kitchen. Since it had already happened like 30 minutes earlier, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and fill up the top-off containers in the fish room. Let me check the TDS of the water because the system it's running. I can hear it running. And it said the TDS was 4. I was like, oh, nope. Still too high. So I grabbed my little beaker that I have. I threw it on top of the dryer, and I put a tube into it, and I opened the valve, and I set the timer on my watch, so important, to remind me to check in 90 seconds. And I do. I tell my watch, set timer 90 seconds. The watch repeats to me, I'm doing that. And then 90 seconds later, it starts vibrating on my wrist, and I'm like, oh yeah. And I run to the utility room, and I see my beaker is 75% full. I hit the button on the TDS meter and it says 1, and that's the RO water. I'm like, okay, now it's time to make DI water. And I open that valve that now the water that's 1 goes into the DI stage and then flows through the ceiling all the way to the fish room and fills up all the containers. And that is my routine. I never drink DI water. I don't recommend you drink DI water. DI water is not good for your system, your body. So weirdly, people want to debate that. It's not even worth debating. It doesn't even taste good. That's the point. And if you wanted to have RODI water to drink, the only way to make it taste good is to add another carbon filter after the DI resin, which is called a taste filter, and it's adding TDS back into the water so that it tastes good in your mouth. So it's just easier, just drink the RO water, because that is exactly what you're buying at the supermarket anyway. If you look at jugs of spring water and fresh water and you look at them, a lot of them on the little label in tiny font will say RO water or distilled water. It'll say what it is, so you can check for yourself. Okay, my dog is going crazy. Hang on. Further away, maybe that'll help. That's it. Yeah, that's all my thoughts on that one. Triggerfish says he loves his checkerboard wrasse. Yeah, they're really pretty. Reef with me. Mina says, do you have any plans of getting Mr. Vargas back on to do another photography session? I could ask him. We haven't gotten together in quite a while. That would be fun. It's a possibility. Okay, let's see. Panopolis says, Richard Ross commentary is always upsetting. User WR7BZ6LR8E says, popular opinion, no one should start a tank with dry rock. Come on, we got to get you a better username. What is that? Is that just a glitch today on YouTube? I really do agree with this random anonymous user. I prefer to start a tank with a live rock. And man, the only time I've ever tried dry rock, it was just such a pain. I just didn't like the results at all. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Thomas is back, and he has said, would a pair of captive bred mandarins work in my tank? My tank is loaded with tiger pods. I see them crawling around at night and in the tank and in the sump. Yeah. So here's the thing, Thomas. On this channel, there's a very old video. So you just search this specific YouTube channel for the Mandarin Diner, like a diner you go to eat at. I made this video back in 2003. It's a super old video. I took an olive jar that I bought at the supermarket filled with olives. I don't like olives. I just bought to get the jar. And I threw the olives away. So now I have this long, skinny jar, or you might say long, skinny jar, right? And then I took a piece of acrylic just to make my life easier, and I heated it and I bent it around the bottle to make a handle. So now I've got this long jar with a handle sticking straight up, so I could put it into my tank that was 30 inches tall. And that way I could lower the jar into the tank and I would set it down even with the sand bed. So here's my sand bed, and I found the spot where my mandarin tended to travel the most frequently. Fish do have a swimming pattern. And if you watch your tank long enough, you'll see what certain fish prefer to do. Like, for example, in my 400-gallon, Spock is everywhere. It doesn't matter where I go, she's like a puppy. She's always following me. But the yellow tang, which I mentioned a few shows ago, hates me. And as soon as I come to the tank, she just darts into the middle of the tank. So if I wanted to give something to the yellow tang, I would put it in the middle of the tank in that spot in the cave it always retreats to as a nice surprise, right? So if you watch your mandarins, you might see there's a spot where they seem to always travel across this one spot. that spot is where you would put the opening of the olive jar that's laying down on your sand bed. And you could put pellet food, very small pellet food. You know, you look for the smallest grains you can, or you take the grind, you know, the pellet food you bought that you have, and you mash it with a spoon to crush it into more dust. And you put some of that pellet food inside the olive jar toward the back end of it, you know, near the closed part, the bottom. And then when you lay it down, the mandarin has to swim into this tunnel to get to the food. Now, I did this because I had 5 mandarins in my 280-gallon tank, and I knew that when I put food in the tank, and, well, let me rewind. I was always cognizant my mandarin needs food, needs pods, you know, needs live food. You know, I was very worried it wouldn't get enough food. And then one day I happened to watch it swim over and slurp up a pellet food off the sand bed. And I was like, are you kidding me? You're eating pellet food? This is amazing. And because of that, I was very pleased because I knew no matter what, my mandarin will never starve because now I know it also likes pellet food. So that's where I came up with the Mandarin Diner, because the thing is, when you drop in pellet food, all your fish go crazy. And they swim around like crazy and they're gobbling it up, you know, like it's in a panic, like I must get them all, don't leave any behind, right? And so if a few happen to manage to get down on the sand bed, the mandarin might get to eat a few. So by creating this eating compartment, this diner, where the fish could swim in, but the other fish could not, that would stop them from stealing the food and gave the mandarin all the time in the world to eat because it was the only fish that fit the olive jar. This was my solution. And so I did that. And I remember I'd put in some pellet food or I'd put in some fish eggs, you know, some roe inside the jar, and I'd lower it into the tank, and all my tangs would be attacking the jar, like biting the glass, but they can't get to the food, and they can see it, and they're super upset, and they're really trying to get it. But I'm also putting food in the tank, but I'm just trying to put this for the mandarin with the opening near where the fish is going to swim out through that area, and it's going to swim right into the jar. And initially, when I first put it in, the mandarin couldn't even find the opening. It saw the pellet food, it wanted to get to it, it was picking at the glass too, and then finally it swam enough that it discovered the opening and it swam in. It was eating pellet food. The other fish couldn't get it. It was fantastic. Spock, on the other hand, is a very smart fish. And what her trick was to do, and I'm going to switch the camera here, she would be in front of the opening of the jar with her fins on each side, right? And she would do this motion back and forth and make the food come out of the jar so she could eat it. I was like, did you just do that? She totally did it. It was really amazing. So I would say that even if you put in food, there's no guarantees that that fish is going to get it because other fish might find a way to get it. Hermit crabs could go in. Shrimp could go in. You know, there's other things that might get the pellet foods. But in the end, even any food is better than no food. So if you're just like relying on pods as a food source, that can be very expensive. But if you can get these fish to eat prepared foods, frozen foods, dry foods, even better as supplemental. It's sort of like I put in frozen food in my tank every single night for the fish, but I also put in nori once a day for the herbivores and as a secondary food source for these fish so they'll do better, and that's why they're nice and plump. So that's all I'm trying to say is that if you can watch that video, see if that helps, and then also keep in mind, just because you put food in the jar doesn't mean it's in the tank forever. You can try it, and you can watch for like 10 or 20 minutes, see if the mandarin goes in or any other fish go in, and if they do and they eat some, good. But if they don't eat it all, you can remove that jar and pour it out and then try again a little bit tomorrow. And you can also determine how much you want to put in there. A few pellets versus a lot of pellets. You know, we're not trying to pollute the tank and make the tank, you know, a cesspool. We just want to provide enough food so that the mandarins can get it. And I'll tell you, my mandarins sometimes they grew and they got big and fat. They got too thick for the jar. And I remember one time this male mandarin was inside the jar and it kind of freaked out because it couldn't turn around. And it just didn't really understand that it could just back up and come out. It didn't want to swim out backwards. And it finally, you know, found its way out of the jar. And so it made me go look for a jar that was a little bit bigger. But if you go too large, then other fish swim in, like dwarf angelfish and things like that. And my goal was to have something small enough that really was just ideal for the specific fish. I also believe back in the day, because it's so long ago, I probably had wrasses swimming in and stealing the food too. And of course, while they're in there gobbling the food and jerking around, they're causing the food to come out, which made all the other fish come eat it as well. So again, we're just trying to make sure there's some food that is available to the slower, less aggressive eaters like mandarins. What's going on here? I see some comments from Paul, but I feel like I missed a point. So Paul said they eat coral skin, but I don't see a message before that. Did I miss it? Maybe he was talking about, I don't know what he was talking about, but he then later said, I was losing 10 nice acropora quickly. Are we talking about cyanobacteria maybe? So, Paul, explain what you're talking about if you're still here. Oh, he's talking about the copepods maybe? Uh-oh. We have a user that bought an aquarium and never got it. That's not good. Jason, I did not yell at Jack. I just asked her what she was barking at. Panopolis says, I have a tank that I rarely do water changes on, and the skimmer is doing its job. Is fresh top-off not enough long-term to maintain the salinity? As long as you're doing top-off, you will continue to have a good salinity in the tank, but you should double-check to make sure it's not wandering. But the other elements are being utilized by the corals and the fish, and even the invertebrates. Everything is absorbing the things it needs to grow and become bigger, and they are depleting. Just think about alkalinity. Why do we keep dosing alkalinity? Because it's being utilized, converted, and removed. And so our number drops off and drops off and drops off, and so we put more in to bring it up. The same thing would go with iodine, strontium, the different elements need to be replenished. And so having a tank that never has a water change, then that just means you have to put in all the elements that are lacking. But we know that a new infusion of salt water will provide a lot of those elements that were used up. And that is why some tanks can run perfectly well with no two-part dosing, because the tank is minimal demanding. It doesn't have a lot of things growing. It could be a fish-only system, and in that case, it's not that critical. But with our reef tanks, it comes down to the types of corals you're keeping. If you have a tank that's essentially softies, probably doesn't need much two-part dosing at all, and the weekly water changes or the monthly water changes may suffice. Some corals, like I said before, are so hardy and so adaptable that they just don't care. It seems like they seem to just keep growing. They seem to look good, and minimal husbandry is required. Other corals are way more finicky and picky, and we have to do more to make them happy. And then Ronald says, what? We should not drink RODI water? No, we should not drink RODI water. So RODI water stands for reverse osmosis deionized water. And deionized water means ion-free. There are no ions in it. And the best comparison I can make, it's not even an analogy, it's a fact. If you have metal fillings in your teeth, which I got all mine fixed, so those are gone now. I have porcelain crowns. If you had metal fillings in your teeth and you drank DI water, it tasted like you had tin foil in your mouth. And it's because your ion-free water is interacting with the metal in your mouth, and it's the ion-free water is trying to get ions from anywhere. So if you're drinking DI water, theoretically, it is stripping your body of nutrients to replenish itself. That's, it's kind of a stupid argument, really, to be honest, because who just only drinks DI water, nothing else? Like if you were stuck in the Sahara Desert and you're crawling across dunes of sand and you have nothing on you and you came across a quart of DI water, you would drink it. You would not say, oh, it's DI, that'll kill me, I can't do it. But because we eat and drink so many other things, we have plenty of other things that replenish wherever we might be lacking with like the choice of DI water. So if you were drinking DI water and you like the taste, which is crazy to me, the fact you're having cereal with milk, you're having mac and cheese, you're having pizza, you're eating lasagna, all these other things, they have water that's not DI, and so you're not stripping your system completely of the electrolytes that make your heart continue to beat. But ideally, the RO part is perfectly fine for you, and the DI part is for your aquarium. That's it. That's all you got to do. And that's why the RODI systems I've been selling for 20 plus years, you have the main system and you have that DI separately, and I include fittings and tubing to split it between the two so you can make RO water for the household and you can make DI water for the aquarium, and that way everyone in the house benefits, and it's not just, oh, you bought yourself a thing for your tank and, don't you care about us? It's like, I do. I'm making you pure water. And, some areas, depending where you live in the U.S., well, this show's international, but wherever you live, some places where you live, the water tastes terrible. Where I used to live, the water was absolutely horrible, and the smell, it was just like sulfuric. And so you had to buy water for drinking, or you had to buy the Brita filter, which is pouring, the tap water through like a silver cartridge, and it would absorb whatever that hideousness was, so you could drink some water and brush your teeth and not, wrinkle up your nose in disdain. So having an RO system was great because it was getting all that crap out of the city water, and I had decent drinking water, which I would fill a gallon jug, or I filled a bunch of Gatorade bottles, and I'd rinse them clean, fill them with RO water, and throw them in the fridge, and I'd have 6 water bottles ready at any time to grab on the run. But yeah, don't drink the DI water. Good. Thomas says, I've seen that video before. Well, there you go. So you don't need to do the handle on the jar. Your tank's smaller than mine is. You can reach in and you just set it on the bottom and lift it out. You could tie a piece of fishing line onto it if you wanted to pull the string to bring the jar up to the top. There's a lot of different solutions, but ultimately we just want to make sure that the edge of the jar is even with the sand. So like if the sand's here and your jar is like up here, the fish has to go up and in. But if you can just lower it to where they're equal, the fish can just drift right into the beaker and get to the pellet food. That's what I was trying to explain earlier. Oh, that's nice. This person said, I used Live Rock Enhanced, the container it came in. It's great for frozen food prep and as a serving cup, especially with a screw-on lid. Yeah, that's a really smart idea. A great way to reuse that container. Thomas says, the website I'm going to order from says their mandarins are raised on pellets. And that might be biota. So, and that's good. That's great. And that means they already know it. So, and they will also be happy to sell you the pellet food. Like they sell DKI pellet food, which are really tiny grains. And so they're going to be the right size to fit into the mouths of your fish. I remember when ORA came out with their mandarins, they said ours are trained to eat pellet food. And people would be so upset because they'd buy the mandarin, they'd put it in their aquarium, they'd drop some pellet food in, it just rained down and lay on the sand, and the mandarins didn't swim toward it. And they blamed the fish, and they said ORA didn't make them right. And it's really a matter of the fish still has to get used to your tank and get used to when the food comes in the tank. And, goes to, it's not like, look, if you dropped a Snickers bar in the middle of this room, I'd get it instantly. But if you drop broccoli, I'll get to it later, It's not one of those things where it's like, oh my God, I must have that now. Mandarins, I just thought the hobbyist reaction to ORA was so weird at the time because I was like, if they said they eat it, then they do. So my first question was, are you buying the pellet food that ORA uses, first of all? Because that's the flavor the fish is used to. It's used to the size, the flavor, the look. So if you have your own brand from like Reef Nutrition or from, what is it? Ocean Nutrition. That was the one. A lot of people used to buy Ocean Nutrition from their fish stores. And they just drop that in. But if that's not what ORA was using, then you're putting in something foreign to the fish. It doesn't recognize the smell, the look, nothing. It's just confused, and so it may not. But that doesn't mean the fish won't adapt. It could when it settles in. But it just seemed like people bought a fish, put in the pellet, didn't eat. Immediately it's a bad fish or it's a bad thing, and they want wild caught only. Which wild caught were not known to eat pellet food either. So it was just such a weird argument. I just, rolled my eyes. I was like, okay, give the fish time. See how this plays out. Try a few times. Try it for a couple of weeks. Let's see. John says, I dose all for reef for I dose all for reef, and my corals have outgrown my tank. What's your opinion on all for reef as it works for me? I have a bottle of it, and I was trying to be good about putting it in the tank behind me every single day, and I did good for like 10 days, and then I forgot about it again. It's just one of those things. But no, if you are having great success with it, that's exactly what it's designed for. The idea was to have that so you wouldn't have to worry about putting in two-part, like alkalinity first and then calcium next and possibly magnesium later. The all for reef was supposed to keep putting in small amounts to maintain those numbers so that your coral growth is phenomenal. It sounds like it's working great for you, and that's totally what I would expect. I think it's a really good product. Phil says, have you ever experienced elevated sulfur? Do you happen to know what may cause that? I've never had it before. My latest ICP showed elevated levels, and my aquabar have lost a bit of color. Sulfur sometimes comes from a bad spot in your sand bed if your tank has sand. And usually the sand would be black in that area, and that's the only source I can think of. I don't know of anything else where else could sulfur come from? Anything that's anoxic. If you have any kind of reactor that only runs a certain amount of hours per day and then it's turned off and it sits there stagnant, that area becomes anoxic because it's lacking fresh air, there's no movement, so the oxygen level is dropping or being consumed. It goes anoxic and it can become sulfuric, which is why running sulfur in a denitrator almost seems insane. But it's one of when we were talking about nitrate earlier, I never got around to saying that I have a reactor that was given to me. I still haven't taken apart, cleaned, and checked to see if the pump works. But if I were to run sulfur reactor on my tank to lower these nitrates once and forever, so I never have to think about it again, I should have done it by now, and I still haven't. It's just one of those, one day I'll do it, and I got to force myself sometimes to do things that I've not done, previously. But you can change water, like he says. I've done several large water changes to bring it down, but I would say that the source probably is a pocket of the sand bed. This person says, so that's why sink drinkable water. I only have RO. You can definitely have RO water for drinking. You can only, some people don't even use DI. They just use RO for their aquarium, and that's totally okay too. The DI just polishes off the last of the TDS. So like if the water coming out of your RO system is 4 instead of 200 coming out of the sink, that's great. In my particular, where I live, my TDS is about 176, give or take, and my system takes it all the way down to 1. And then it goes into the DI, which makes it 0. And so my DI cartridge lasts a super long time. But a few years ago, my city water, something was different with it, and the TDS was coming out was like 23. And I'd have to replace the DI cartridge every few months because it was being consumed so rapidly. So having it coming out super low is obviously the best preference. But if you don't run DI at all, if you're only using RO, and as long as the number's low, that's good. Just keep measuring your TDS to make sure that you're having a nice low number. And yes, you can totally drink it too. New Image Aquarium says, what is going on here with a spawning mop behind you? Freshwater fish. So these are the saltwater crocs, and I have a picture of what they look like full grown. It's right here. And I got these eggs mailed to me back on August 5th. They arrived, and they are in salt water. The eggs, some of the eggs hatched immediately. On the very first day, 3 of them hatched, and I don't know what they are. It's a mystery project, and I didn't show the mop for a long time because I was trying not to give everyone like a super obvious clue. But these fish behind me now, some of them are 90 days old, some of them are younger. But about 3 weeks ago, they started making eggs again. And the person that sent me the eggs said you should put the mop back in the tank. So I did. But I didn't do it for a long time because, I was just like, I just want to raise these fish. I don't really care about the eggs. But then I was doing a water change, I guess, I don't know, a week ago. And I was siphoning the bottom. I'd scrub the walls down. I scrubbed the bottom. I like to have the tank nice and pristine, for the water change. And so I got everything off the surfaces, and then I started, siphoning out everything. And I had a bunch of eggs in the bucket, and then I felt guilty. I was like, it's not their fault. They shouldn't just die in a toilet. So I went ahead and I captured the eggs, and so behind me there, you'll see a breeder basket. And I poured most of the water change water into the toilet, and when I got to the gunk at the bottom, I was like, all right. I poured that right into the breeder basket, and I saw these pearl-like eggs, and they're very small, and they look like glass, and they feel like glass. That's the crazy part. I don't breed fish. I never have. This is the first time I've ever bred anything, and I did it because eggs were sent to me. And the idea was that I would raise these not knowing what they are, and that at some point I would recognize them and I would be able to identify them. And so far, I have no clue what I'm looking at, which is kind of funny, and it's kind of fun. And there's been a few people that have been guessing, and I've been trying to ask people, don't tell me what it is, just let me kind of figure it out on my own. And if you're right, congratulations. And if you're wrong, cool. We're going to figure it out together. That'll be the idea. But what I did not know about fish eggs, like clownfish eggs, I've seen them in the tank attached to the rock, and they're wiggling. And I always assumed that they're gelatinous because the fish has to emerge from it. But these eggs, they're hard, like a marble. I mean, I was trying to pick one up, and it was super hard. I was like, wow, that's really, really hard. And I didn't squeeze, but I was like, it feels rigid. Like, wow, I had no clue. So anyway, I've got some eggs in that basket, and right now there are, as of last night, there are 8 babies that have hatched in the breeder basket, and then there's still whatever there are, like 59 of these larger fish that have been aging, and hopefully at some point in the next 20 days or so, I should have enough information looking at the fish to say, oh, it's this. And the idea is that maybe, possibly, these fish could live in a refugium, which would be kind of neato. But I would need to get some kind of a sponge that goes in the output of my refugium, because right now I have these 3/8 inch gaps in the teeth, so they would just go right through and end up in the return zone and possibly into the return pump and into the reef, and who knows. So if I had some kind of a sponge that has really giant pores, but not so large that a fish can swim through the pore, that would be a good way to have some activity down there within the caulerpa. It would be kind of neat. So, but yeah, I had a picture. I threw away all the pictures from last week's show, or from last show, but I had one that was minutes old, and I shared the picture on this channel because I was super proud of it, because the thing was like 3 millimeters long, and I got this incredible picture of it. It was so pretty, and I was like, wow. So, yeah, I don't know what it is, but the thing is, there are some eggs on the bottom of the tank right now, and there are some eggs on the mop. So I'm just going to let them kind of do what they do. And eventually I will obviously tell you guys what it is. But for now, all I know is it's a saltwater fish. Reefkeeper says, do you think the silt in my calcium reactor may have been the source? It was super muddy inside. I just cleaned it out after the test. It would smell. It would smell sulfuric. I also get that sludge in my reactor. I mean, it's why I take the reactor down once a year and really clean it out completely. But again, it tends to be areas that have turned dark black. That's what I would expect. Triggerfish says, any new fish coming soon for you? Yes, we had talked about the chalk basslettes that I wanted, and I asked for Frank's Tanks 4 months ago. It never happened. I don't know what's going on, but there's another source that Matt pointed me to. He says, this company sells them. I was like, oh, great. So I will probably get myself a few for Caitlin's reef. Once I really would like my nitrates to be down and stay down on the reef because I'd like to stock my 400 gallon with a bunch of Anthias. I think that'd be beautiful. I really like the Bisinctus. They're expensive, but they're beautiful. And having something like that in the tank where I can feed frequently and keep them fat and happy and not worry about nitrate would be amazing. And then he asked also, do you have plans to carry Richard Ross's Reef SIBO in the shop? I would love to if people were buying it left and right. I have a bottle that was given to me, or that I won at Reef Retreat, and I was reading the instructions on the bottle again because it amuses me. It's something like add water and shake for an hour or something like that. It's so silly. And then you like add a drop and you just leave your tank alone for a week and just see what happens. It's such great advice for taking care of your aquarium. And then Andreas says they're Crocs. I'm right. So, yeah, so I don't know what's happening. I tried to take some better pictures of those fish last night again with my Nikon, and some pictures were okay, some were crappy. I'm growing brine shrimp every single day, and the tank right now has thousands swimming around. So here's something cool about that tank. Because I'm only feeding baby brine shrimp, and they're alive, there's no waste. There's no decay other than the output from the fish when they poop. So I'm not dealing with a big, huge bioload. First of all, I have little tiny fish, right? And if I were to take all those fish and just smush them into a ball, like one massive fish, I don't know, what would I get? A golf ball? It's still a pretty small bioload for a 10-gallon aquarium. So it's not a big pollutant. And because I'm not putting in like dead food or dry food or frozen food, I'm just putting in live brine that continue to live and swim. It's not decaying the water column. But if I were to like switch over now to pellet food or flake food, I'd have to be way more on top of the water changes to make sure that the tank does not get away from me and become toxic. It's just one of those things that it's kind of neato. And I'm really enjoying that it's cool to me that I receive these eggs and that I not only hatch them, but I have grown them and continue to keep them alive. I mean, like I said, some are 90, well, now they are 100 days. The oldest one is 100 days old. I mean, that's pretty awesome. For a guy that's never bred fish in his life to be able to raise something from an egg and keep it alive for 100 days is pretty cool. And I guess I'm doing something right if they're making more of themselves, or maybe it's a defense mechanism because they're terrified they're going to die. So like make more of ourselves quick, like an anemone will do when it splits itself because it's desperate to survive. But hopefully that's not the reason, and they're just fat and happy to make more of themselves. I did ask Matt, do I know what F these are? Which, you hear F1, F2, F3, So first of all, I learned the word F stands for filial, which I didn't know what that meant. And I think it has something to do with like brothers and sisters, to be honest, siblings. I don't know. But he explained to me how it works, like when you have a couple of wild caught fish, you've got one from here and one from there, different locations, and you put them together in a tank and they make babies. And if I get this wrong, it's because I did not learn it properly, not because I'm trying to give misinformation. But I think I understood it right. So you got these two random fish that get together, mate, make babies, and you raise them. That's F1. Then, I think he said, because he talked a lot, and it goes through my brain, but it's not my topic, so it just kind of goes over my head. But I think he said if one of the babies then mates with one of the adults, then it's an F2. So anyway, I don't know what mine are. And, because I got them from someone else, for all I know, mine are F13s or something. But the thing is, like, well, did the babies I make become F14? And he's like, no. He says, but because you have so many, because there's 59 of them, and, you got these eggs, but you don't know the source of the eggs. Like, you don't know that they're all from one clutch from two fish. If there's just a bunch of eggs from a bunch of fish, there's a lot of, what did he say? it's not all of the same family, so to speak. That's the wrong word. It's not it's not the same parents all the time, so I should say. So because you have like one male that's getting with multiple females, there's a lot of change happening with the DNA. And so there is a lot of opportunities for different ones. And so you can, and if you have a certain, and he was telling me about this magic number in nature, like if you have 5,000 of something, it will go on forever. But if you have like 50 of something, there's a limited time frame because excess inbreeding, I guess, would be the best way to describe it. So the fact that I have 59 of them and they're getting together and doing their thing and they're all laying different, the different females are laying different eggs, and then there's different things happening, I think it's kind of a good thing. I don't know. It's kind of where my brain kind of shut down. I was like, okay. I remember the word filials. I was proud of that. Okay, Phil says Encamat might be the solution to keep fish out of the return section of your sump. This side of the tank here, that is called a matin filter. It comes from Swiss Tropicals, and it's a dense mat. And because he sells so much sponge material, I think I know what you're talking about, the Encamat. Yeah, that was the stuff we used to use on our skimmers for the impeller. Yeah. Something, that's really coarse, but lets water pass through it easily. I mean, even detritus would flow right through it too, but it would keep fish. Yeah, you're right. So I was going to get with Stefan and see what he had in his possession that I could just wedge in the refugium because I have teeth along one side and then it turns the corner and there's teeth along this side. So if I can take this thing and just wedge it in there to where it covers all of them, water's going to rush through, but it won't let any fish escape. That would be perfect. Good tip. I like it. L. Stewart says, when setting up the calcium reactor, do you recommend using tank water to fill the reactor? Or do you recommend starting with RODI water instead? I fill it up with tank water. I always have. You might, if for some crazy reason, which I don't know why this would be the case, but if you were like trying to put it in the tank and it was bobbing around because it's too light, which I don't know how that could be, you could put RO water in there just to kind of get by. It would just be like putting RO water in your system. It's just instead of being in the top-off container, it's coming out of a reactor initially. But usually the weight of the reactor, the pump on it, and the media inside makes it heavy enough, it'll just set down in your sump and not be a problem. And then I hook up the tubing I have a dosing pump, and I just let it gradually fill it up. And what I do is I set hang on just one sec, my throat's getting dry. My dosing pump is so slow because it's only putting in 60 milliliters a minute, and my reactor is 23 inches tall. I will set a timer on my watch usually or on my phone that will say remind me to look at this thing in 20 minutes or so, and then I go check and it's near to the top, and then finally when it's filled to the top with tank water, that's when I turn on the pump to let it circulate and force out any last air bubbles. But tank water is what it's going to be anyway, so I just do tank water. Rob says, any good Black Friday deals? My auto top-off pump died today, so I'm thinking it's time for a new tank or a new top-off. You might find all kinds of sales. I don't know. I haven't really been paying attention to the Black Friday stuff. I should, and I usually don't, and then I look things up, I'm like, oh, that was a deal, But sometimes the things I really want, they don't really drop in price very much. I'm like, it was hardly worth it. Like, for example, I really wanted the CalDigit 4. It's this gizmo that I bought. And it lets me plug 14 things into one computer. And I really wanted it for a long time. And every year, I would say, oh, it's Black Friday. Let me see what it costs. And it was always like $380. It never came down. And then they came out with a new version of CalDigit, like the CalDigit 5. I'm like, okay, well, then the 4 should be on sale. $380. And then I found a deal. I don't know if I ever told you guys this story, but I thought for once I would use AliExpress. I've heard people use it successfully. I looked it up, and it was $100 off. I was like, oh, yes, I'll buy that. So I tried to buy it, and all 3 of my credit cards were rejected. And I was like, that's so weird. And I even called my bank, and it was like 1 a.m. on Friday, or no, like on Sunday night, 1 a.m, Monday morning. And I called the bank, it's like, are you blocking this transaction because it's going to AliExpress? And it said, we have not received any transaction from AliExpress. There's nothing. No one's tried to buy anything. You're fine. I was like, all right. So I went back to the website again, and I finally got some card to work. And I got an email that said, your order's been received. And I was just like, man, I don't know. This seems so iffy. I don't know why I did this. I mean, I know I wanted to save the $100. But then I wasn't hearing anything. And when I tried to log into the site, it wouldn't even take me to the site. It put me on this weird page that said my account was flagged, and the only option was to appeal. I'm like, appeal what? I'm a customer that bought something. And it wouldn't even let me hit submit until I put something in there. So I took a screen grab of my order that the email said I had, and I said, I just want to know when my order's going to arrive. I need more information, and I hit appeal. And I checked it for a couple of days, and it always just said appeal. It never did anything. So I called the credit card company. I said, listen, I think I'm getting ripped off. Can you just stop that? Or can you fight this payment? Because I think something's not right. And I mean, in the meantime, I'm still frustrated. I'm like, I did try to buy this thing. The money did leave my account. So I went to their website again. I logged into it. I even downloaded the AliExpress app, and I logged into that, and nothing showed that there was a pending order. Just nothing. Just that one weird page that wasn't even like a normal web page with this appeal link on it, which makes me. And the thing is, I mean, I went to it from a Google search. It wasn't like I had some weird link I clicked on in an email address that was suspicious. It was an ad. It showed the item. I click it. It takes me to the page, and I'm add to cart, and I'm having all these struggles. So anyway, the card did fight it, and the money was replaced back into my account, and nothing ever came of it. And I deleted the app, and I'm not buying anything from AliExpress. And I went to Amazon, bought this thing, and got it, and I've been using it ever since. And I like it. And not only does it, it has ports on the back, it has ports on the front. It lets me put my memory card in there from the camera when I'm editing pictures. Sometimes I can plug in something I want to charge on the front. I can put headphones into it. It does everything. It's a really nice thing. And, with a funny thing about the Mac series of computers, Apple computers, is that they only give you a few ports. Or you get a PC and there's like 400 holes on the device that you can plug anything you want for your peripherals. And I just needed something where I could plug in multiple monitors, and I could plug in the microphone, the teleprompter, all these different things I use. Everything's connected. And I even have an external drive here that sits on my desk at all times. Let's see if I can hold this up. See that? And that is my automatic backup of my computer that happens every single day, and it's plugged into that gizmo. So I love that I got it. And I just had to pay full price. Black Friday, never paid off for me. So if you find a deal, tell me what it is. Maybe I want it. I know. Phil says, ATO dies, buy a new tank. I like it. So funny. John says, we had an event here in England, and our guest speakers were Julian Sprung, Tony Vargas, Salem, Jamie Craggs, and Corey Treadwell. I know. I saw some pieces of that on my social media. I saw these power hitters there giving these talks. Like, oh. And he said, amazing. They came to speak to 120 of us. It sounds like a wonderful event. I'm glad you guys got to have that and you got to hear these people. Such intelligence all gathered into one room is wonderful. So, yeah, good for you. I'm glad you got to go to that and that you got to enjoy it, because that's fantastic. Well, listen, guys, we found a way to talk for an hour and a half, and I didn't even have a topic today. So let me go ahead and see if we can do this. Today is Water Test Saturday. Please do test your water parameters. I tell you this every single time we do a live stream because it's just that important. Water tests save lives. This is something Caitlin said, and I loved it. We put it on a t-shirt briefly, and I stick it on the stream. If you are checking your water parameters, you'll know how things are going. You can make the corrections, and you can keep your livestock healthy and happy and not lose livestock. If you ignore things, and if you don't test your water, and things start going wrong, well, I know what you're going to do. You're going to test the water because things are going wrong. But if you just stayed on top of it, you might have caught it early on. If Joe Vaiulo's 20,000-gallon reef tank was on autopilot and he never tested, and then finally when all the corals started dying and he started testing, he'd have massive amounts of effort to fix what's going wrong. Instead, he prefers to fix it early on before things go wrong. It's just like me. I see the insight screen we talked about on that live stream with Terrence, where it shows my phosphate level every single day. And because it's right there in front of me as I walk past the tank, it helps me decide, do I want to put in phosphate RX today, or do I want to hold off a little bit longer? And that is a beneficial thing, to know the number, to know if you want to make a change or if you feel like it can ride out. But if you just don't even know what the numbers are, I mean, you might think ignorance is bliss, but it's not good for the livestock. We want to make sure everything's okay. So hey, that's my recommendation to you. I hope that you guys have a great weekend. I'll see you again next Saturday. Bye, guys.